Even though the girl had already shared her music in front of others, her journey with the piano continued quietly and beautifully. Every morning she would wake up and sit by the keys, letting her fingers explore melodies and rhythms that came from her heart. Her mother would sit nearby, sometimes reading, sometimes just listening, always offering silent support. The room was filled with a calm energy, a combination of concentration, love, and quiet joy. Word of her performance had reached many people in the community. Teachers, parents, and students would occasionally mention it in conversation, always with admiration. The girl's courage and dedication had left a lasting impression, not only because of the music, but because of the way she approached life with sincerity, humility, and determination. The story of the performance had inspired others to pay attention to hidden effort, to notice the quiet, hard-working individuals around them, and to value heart over appearances. The girl began experimenting with her music in new ways. She tried small improvisations, exploring different rhythms and harmonies, learning how to express emotion, not just through notes but through feeling. Each new sound she discovered excited her. She could play softly, loudly, quickly, slowly, and every variation had a meaning. The piano had become more than an instrument. It was a way for her to connect with herself and the people she loved. Her mother noticed the change in her confidence. While the girl was still quiet and thoughtful, there was a steadiness in her movements, a certainty in the way she touched the keys. It was as if she had discovered a secret part of herself through music. Her mother often whispered encouragements, reminding her daughter that she had a gift not to be hidden, but to be nurtured and shared when the time felt right. The school continued to be influenced by her example. Teachers encouraged students to practice patience and to recognize the quiet talents around them. Students who had once been shy or uncertain started to take small steps to participate, inspired by the girl's courage. The story of her performance was used as a lesson in humility, its dedication, and the power of silent effort. The girl sometimes played for small groups of students, friends, or family. She never sought attention or applause. Instead, she focused on sharing her music with those who would listen. People who heard her began to understand that her skill was rooted in love, discipline, and the desire to communicate emotion, not in the need to perform for recognition. Each note carried meaning, each song a message. At home, she and her mother would sometimes play together. Not both on the piano at once, but the mother would hum along, or clap softly, or just sit in quiet admiration. These moments strengthened their bond. Music became a shared language, a connection beyond words. They did not need to speak to understand each other. The piano communicated what words sometimes could not. The girl's confidence slowly expanded beyond music. She started participating in other school activities, small at first. Careful steps into spaces that had once felt intimidating. But the courage she had found through performing in front of her mother and the hall of people gave her strength. She learned that facing fear, even in small ways, could open doors to experiences she might have never imagined. People in the community continued to speak of her performance from time to time. It became a quiet symbol of the power of dedication and heart. Parents reminded their own children of the lesson. Teachers shared it as a story of patience and attention to effort. And students referenced it as an example of courage and perseverance. Even those who had initially doubted her admitted quietly they had been inspired and humbled. The girl also began to compose her own small pieces. These were simple melodies at first, sometimes inspired by moments she had shared with her mother, sometimes by feelings she wanted to express. She would play these compositions over and over, learning to refine them and give them more depth. Each new piece was a personal message, a way to capture emotion and translate it into sound. Her mother listened closely, offering gentle guidance and encouragement, always respecting the creative space her daughter needed. Occasionally, she was asked to perform in small recitals or events. She accepted some invitations and declined others, choosing carefully based on her comfort and the significance of the occasion. When she did play, she approached it with the same focus and sincerity as the first time. The audience, now familiar with her story, listened with respect and attention. Inspired by the authenticity of her music rather than seeking spectacle, the hall was full of people. It was a bright afternoon, and the room smelled faintly of flowers and old wood. Chairs were arranged in rows, and at the front, a shiny piano waited under the soft lights. People were chatting, clapping, and preparing for the small music event. Children were running around, teachers and parents were talking quietly, and volunteers were checking the instruments. A young girl stood at the back. She was small, with worn shoes and a faded jacket. Her hair was tied back roughly, and she clutched a small notebook close to her chest. She had been looking at the piano for a long time, her eyes following every shine and every note on the sheet music that was stacked nearby. Her hands were slightly trembling, but her eyes held determination. Her mother sat a few rows ahead, looking tired. She had been working hard all week and had little time to rest. She didn't know her daughter was going to play today. The girl turned to her mother and whispered softly, almost hoping no one would hear, "Can I play it for my mom?" A few people nearby heard the question and laughed quietly. One of the volunteers said, "For your mom? This isn't a private concert." The girl looked down but didn't say anything. She just stared at the piano, imagining the sound of the first note. People continued to laugh quietly or whisper to each other, thinking it was a joke. The girl didn't step back. She slowly walked toward the piano, her steps careful. Some chairs were in the way, and her feet barely made a sound on the polished floor. She carried her notebook and placed it gently on the music stand. Everyone looked at her with curiosity and a little disbelief. A teacher, who was helping organize the event, came closer and asked, "Are you sure you want to play?" The girl nodded, her voice firm but quiet. "Yes, just one song for my mom." The teacher hesitated but then nodded. "Okay, just one song. Make it quick." The audience had mixed reactions. Some rolled their eyes, thinking this was going to waste time. Others were curious, wondering if the little girl could actually play. Children stopped running, noticing the quiet tension in the room. The volunteers returned to their work, trying not to pay too much attention, assuming it would be a short, forgettable performance. The girl stood at the piano, her hands hovering over the keys. She could feel the warmth of the polished wood beneath her fingers. She closed her eyes for a moment, thinking about her mother. The tired smile she always had, the way she worked so hard to make things better. The thought gave her courage. She opened her eyes and looked at the sheet music. It was not a complicated piece, but it required care, emotion, and precision. She placed her fingers on the keys, feeling the weight of each note, imagining how it would sound. Her heart was beating fast, but she remembered her purpose. This was for her mom, and nothing else mattered. People started whispering again. "She doesn't look like she can play. This will be embarrassing." The laughter was soft but clear. The girl ignored it, focusing on the first note. Her mother noticed her daughter standing there, and a faint smile appeared. She didn't fully understand what was about to happen, but she felt a wave of pride already. The girl took a deep breath. She pressed the first key. The sound was soft, a single note that echoed in the hall. People turned slightly, some out of curiosity, others out of habit. She pressed the next note, and then the next. The melody began to form, simple at first, but gentle and full of feeling. The audience began to notice something. The girl's fingers moved with care, almost like they knew exactly what they were doing. The notes were steady, each one clear and precise. The whispers slowed, and the laughter stopped. Some people leaned forward, their faces showing surprise. She played slowly, letting each note speak. She did not try to impress anyone else in the room. Her eyes were on her mother, who had tears forming. The music was soft but powerful, a quiet message of love and gratitude. It was as if every note was saying thank you. Every chord was a hug for her mother. The room became still. Even the children stopped moving. The teachers and volunteers could not help but listen. The laughter from earlier seemed like a distant memory. People were caught by the simplicity and the emotion in her performance. No one expected such a small, quiet girl to create such a powerful moment. The girl continued, her confidence growing with every measure. She remembered all the times she had practiced alone. On old keyboards, on borrowed pianos, sometimes late at night when the house was silent. Those hours were hidden from the world. But now they were shining through in her music. Her mother was crying quietly, unable to stop smiling. She remembered all the sacrifices, all the struggles. And now she understood how much effort her daughter had put in just to play for her. The audience could see the bond between them, the unspoken story in each note. The final note lingered in the hall, soft and clear. For a moment, there was complete silence. No one knew how to react. Then slowly, some people began clapping. It was gentle at first, but it grew louder. Soon, the entire room was applauding. People were standing, some with tears in their eyes, some just shaking their heads in amazement. The girl looked at her mother, who stood up and hugged her tightly. The applause continued, but the girl felt only the warmth of that hug. The laughter from earlier seemed like it had never existed. The people who had doubted her were now speechless. Realizing that they had judged too quickly, the teacher who had doubted her first said softly, "That was beautiful. Truly beautiful." The volunteers and organizers were smiling, amazed at how a small act of love could turn a simple event into something unforgettable. The audience learned a lesson without even realizing it. Talent and dedication could come from anywhere. A quiet heart could speak louder than words. The girl stepped back from the piano, her hands trembling slightly, but her heart full. She had done exactly what she wanted. She had played for her mother, and in doing so, she had surprised everyone. People would remember this moment, not because it was perfect, but because it was real, human, and full of emotion. Her mother held her hand and whispered, "Thank you, my love." The girl smiled, feeling proud but humble. She had shown that determination and love could create something beautiful, even in a room full of doubters. And in that quiet, shining moment, she knew that her music had reached not only her mother, but everyone who was willing to listen. The applause still echoed softly in the hall, but the girl had stepped back from the piano. Her hands were shaking slightly, and her face was red from nerves and relief. People were talking quietly to each other, still processing what had just happened. Some shook their heads in disbelief, while others smiled broadly. Feeling the warmth of the music that had just filled the room, the teacher who had allowed her to play walked over and placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You have a gift," the teacher said softly, almost as if saying it out loud would make it disappear. "Do you know how many people in this room never expected that from you?" The girl nodded, looking down at her shoes. She was shy, but her eyes sparkled with pride. Her mother had tears in her eyes and was holding her daughter's hand tightly. She whispered, "You were amazing. I am so proud of you." Some of the volunteers who had been arranging chairs and checking instruments earlier came forward, curious and respectful now. They asked about the piece, about how long she had been practicing and where she had learned to play. The girl explained quietly, without exaggeration, that she had practiced in small moments at home, sometimes on an old keyboard that barely worked. She said she had wanted to make sure she could play this one song for her mother. No one else. The audience began to react in different ways. A few people who had laughed earlier felt embarrassed. They realized how quickly they had judged her based on appearance and a small question. Others whispered to each other about the courage it took to stand in front of a room full of strangers and play from the heart. Children who had been running around earlier were now quiet, staring at the girl with wonder. A small group of teachers gathered near the back, talking among themselves. One of them said, "We need to remember this. So often we judge too soon, and we forget how much effort and heart is hidden behind simple appearances." Another nodded, adding, "She reminded us that talent and emotion cannot always be measured by confidence or presentation. Sometimes it comes quietly and shocks the world." The girl's mother, still holding her hand, looked around the room. She realized that this small performance had changed more than just her own heart. It had reminded everyone present that patience, kindness, and attention to hidden effort mattered more than quick laughter or judgment. Her daughter had turned a moment that could have been humiliation into a powerful lesson for everyone. People began asking for the girl to play again, but she shook her head gently. This one song was for her mother, and she had given everything she could to it. The audience understood and clapped again, this time with a deeper feeling, almost a respect that went beyond applause. The volunteers approached the piano and gently adjusted the sheet music, offering quiet words of encouragement. "You are going to go far," one said. We hope we will see more of you soon." The girl smiled softly, nodding. She felt proud, but she did not seek attention. All she wanted was to share something meaningful with her mother, and in doing so, she had quietly captivated everyone. Some parents in the audience whispered to their own children, telling them that effort and dedication mattered more than showing off or fitting in. Teachers nodded silently, realizing they had just witnessed a moment that would stay in their memory. Even the children, who had been distracted, began to understand that there was more to talent than what met the eye. The girl's mother held her hand and whispered again, "You made everyone see what really matters." The girl looked up, her nervousness fading, replaced by a quiet confidence. She knew that she had done exactly what she set out to do. She had played for her mother, and that was all that mattered. Meanwhile, the hall slowly returned to its usual rhythm. People moved to their seats, some still talking about the girl's performance. A few older musicians, who had been part of the event for many years, exchanged glances, surprised at the purity and strength of the music that had come from such a small, unassuming person. They had expected entertainment, but instead, they had experienced a lesson in humanity, patience, and love. The girl's mother hugged her tightly. "I will never forget this," she said softly. "You have given me a memory that will last forever." The girl felt warmth in her chest and smiled quietly. She knew that every late night of practice, every quiet moment spent learning the piano alone, had been worth it. As the audience began to leave or prepare for the next performers, many people took a moment to pause and reflect. Some had come expecting a simple recital, a casual event to pass the time. Instead, they had been reminded of humility, courage, and the beauty of sharing something purely from the heart. It was a moment that would stay with them far longer than any applause. The volunteers and organizers began arranging the chairs again, quietly praising the girl to each other. One said, "I can't believe we almost didn't let her play. This just goes to show how important it is to give everyone a chance, no matter how small they seem." Even the children, who had been laughing and running around before, now looked up at the piano with a new sense of respect. They asked their parents if they could try playing like her, inspired by the simple bravery and quiet dedication they had just witnessed. The girl, still standing by her mother, smiled softly at their curiosity. She didn't say anything but felt happy that her small act had inspired others. The teacher, who had doubted her first, approached again. "You know," the teacher said, "most of the time, people miss what is truly important. They look for showiness and confidence, but they forget heart. You reminded us all that heart matters most." The girl simply nodded, not needing to say anything. Her mother's embrace said enough. Some audience members began talking quietly about their own children, and how they should encourage them more, how they should pay attention to the small moments of dedication that often go unnoticed. It became clear that one small act of courage could ripple through many lives. Teaching lessons far beyond the music itself, the girl took a final look at the piano. It was a simple instrument, nothing extravagant, but it had allowed her to communicate everything she felt for her mother. She ran her fingers gently over the keys once more, not to play, but to thank the piano for helping her share her heart. Her mother held her hand tightly, understanding completely the quiet meaning behind the gesture. The hall slowly emptied, leaving a warm, lingering feeling. Everyone had learned something valuable that day. Even though it was a small event, the moment had grown into something much bigger. People who had come to watch music leave with a story of courage, love, and respect for hidden efforts. The girl's mother whispered again, "You are amazing. Never forget that." The girl smiled softly, feeling the truth in the words. She had played for her mother, and in doing so had changed the way many others would see the world. The small, quiet act had become something extraordinary, and she had done it all without seeking attention, simply by being sincere, dedicated, and loving. The hall had quieted now, but the energy from the girl's performance lingered. People were still talking in low voices, sharing their surprise and admiration. Many could not believe that someone so young and unassuming could create such a powerful moment. The girl sat quietly beside her mother, her hands folded in her lap. Feeling a mix of relief and pride, the room seemed to take a collective deep breath. The next performers were preparing their instruments. But their usual confidence seemed different now, tempered by the example of the girl who had just played. Her courage had left an impression on everyone, teaching them a lesson about humility and talent. The girl's mother whispered again, her voice full of emotion. "Do you know how many people are amazed by you?" The girl shook her head gently, still absorbing the experience. Her mother squeezed her hand and smiled, a soft but proud expression that made the girl feel warmth and accomplishment. Some of the audience members were hesitant to move or talk loudly, as if breaking the quiet energy might spoil the memory of the performance. Teachers and volunteers looked at each other with quiet respect, realizing that this small event had unexpectedly become something extraordinary. A few students approached the girl with shy smiles, asking her how she learned to play so beautifully. She answered humbly, explaining that she had practiced on an old broken keyboard at home, taking small moments whenever she could. Her story of dedication inspired others more than her performance alone. People began to understand that talent was not only about natural skill, but also about determination, effort, and love. The teachers gathered near the back, discussing how important it was to recognize hidden effort and encourage students to express themselves. They noted how easily they had underestimated the girl based on her appearance and quiet demeanor. One teacher said, "It is amazing how much we miss when we only look at the outside." She reminded us that true talent can be quiet and still powerful. The girl's mother held her daughter's hand tightly, tears in her eyes. She felt an overwhelming sense of pride and relief. All the late nights her daughter had spent practicing the sacrifices, and the effort now had a meaningful result. Her child had taken a simple question, asked with innocence, and turned it into a moment that touched everyone present. Some of the older musicians who were part of the event approached quietly, nodding in approval. They had expected to hear simple performances, but what they had just witnessed went beyond technique. It was emotion, courage, and a deep human connection. The girl's music had reached the hearts of everyone, including the most experienced performers. Children who had been playing and chatting now gathered near the piano, curious and inspired. They asked questions about how to practice, how to focus, and how to play with feeling. The girl answered with simple, kind words, encouraging them to keep practicing and to find their own love for music. She did not claim to be better than anyone else. Instead, she shared what had worked for her, quietly encouraging others to try their best. The volunteers, who had been busy organizing the event, approached the girl and her mother. They offered words of support, praising not only the performance but also the courage it had taken to ask for a chance. "It is not easy to stand in front of people when you are shy," one said. "You showed everyone that courage matters as much as skill." Some parents who had been skeptical or dismissive at first were now reflecting quietly. They thought about their own children and the moments they had overlooked. The girl's small act had sparked a wave of awareness, reminding adults that hidden effort and quiet talent should be nurtured, not ignored or ridiculed. The girl's mother guided her to the piano again, letting her rest her hands lightly on the keys. She did not expect another performance, but she wanted her daughter to feel supported and appreciated. The girl ran her fingers gently across the keys, not playing a full song, but letting the sound remind everyone of the beauty that had just filled the hall. It was a soft, reflective moment, almost a message of gratitude to the piano. The music, and everyone who had listened. The audience watched in silence, captivated by the gesture. No one spoke. There was no laughter, no whispers, only the sound of gentle notes floating through the room. It reminded them of why music could be so powerful. It could touch hearts in ways that words could not. The teachers and organizers reflected on how small moments could have a big impact. They discussed ways to encourage students who were quiet, shy, or overlooked, realizing that sometimes the most remarkable performances came from unexpected places. The girl's courage and dedication had set an example that would resonate long after the event ended. Her mother whispered again, "You have changed the room today. I hope you know how special this is." The girl smiled quietly, feeling the truth in her mother's words. She understood that this one act had already made a difference, not just for her, but for everyone who had witnessed it. The volunteers continued their work, but their demeanor had shifted. They were now more attentive, more thoughtful, as if reminded of the importance of supporting everyone who wanted a chance to share their abilities. The atmosphere in the hall had changed completely, from casual expectation to one of respect and admiration. Some of the audience members, previously skeptical, approached the girl to ask questions about her practice, her favorite pieces, and her inspiration. She answered humbly, emphasizing patience, consistency, and love for music. Her words resonated with those who had come expecting entertainment. They found instead a lesson in dedication, humility, and courage. Even the younger children, who had been restless, were now quiet and reflective. They watched the girl with wide eyes, absorbing not only her performance, but her spirit. They began asking their parents if they could try instruments at home, inspired by the idea that effort and practice could lead to something meaningful. The girl's mother stood behind her, still holding her hand. She felt the pride swell in her chest. She had worried. She had doubted whether her daughter would be able to face the room. But now she understood that her child had inner strength far beyond what anyone could have imagined. The mother silently thanked the girl for teaching everyone present a lesson about courage, humility, and love. The volunteers and organizers returned to their tasks, but there was a new energy among them. They whispered to each other about how the small, quiet girl had become the highlight of the day, leaving a lasting impression on everyone. Even the performers who were waiting their turn felt a mix of nervousness and inspiration. Wanting to rise to the occasion after witnessing such a moving example, the girl and her mother slowly walked toward the back of the hall, receiving gentle smiles, nods, and words of praise from people they passed. Each gesture reinforced the impact of her performance. She realized that her one simple question, asked out of love, had led to an unforgettable experience. Touching hearts far beyond her initial expectation, the hall eventually settled back into routine. The next performances took place, but the atmosphere had changed. People listened more attentively, treated performers with more respect, and held space for moments of quiet courage. All because one small, shy girl had asked to play a song for her mother. The girl's mother whispered softly as they left, "You are incredible. Today will stay with me forever." The girl smiled, feeling a quiet pride, not in applause or recognition, but in knowing she had shared something deeply meaningful. She had played for her mother, and in doing so, she had shown everyone that courage, love, and dedication could create something unforgettable. She had turned a small request into a powerful lesson for all, proving that the heart could speak louder than words, and that music could reach places even the eyes could not see. The next day, the story of the girl's performance spread quietly through the school and community. Teachers spoke to each other about what had happened, students told their friends, and parents whispered to one another. The story was not about fame or skill alone. It was about courage, humility, and love, and how one small act could make a big difference. The girl returned home with her mother, feeling a mix of pride and exhaustion. She had slept poorly the night before, going over the notes in her head, worrying about what people might think. Now, after the performance, she felt relief and happiness. She had faced the room, played her heart out, and shared a deeply personal gift with her mother. That was all she had wanted. Her mother held her hand tightly as they walked, saying again and again how proud she was. "You have shown everyone that courage matters more than appearances," she said. "You have made people see the importance of heart." The girl nodded quietly, feeling the truth of her mother's words. At school, teachers began to notice a change in how students treated each other. Some students who were usually overlooked received more encouragement. The girl's performance had reminded everyone that talent and effort could be hidden, that quiet dedication was often more valuable than flashy confidence. Some of the older students approached the girl, asking how she managed to play with such feeling. She explained simply that she had practiced for a long time, often alone, and that she played for someone she loved, not for recognition. Her humility inspired others, showing them that the joy of sharing something meaningful mattered more than applause. The music teacher, who had been part of the event, spoke to other teachers and volunteers about the importance of giving every student a chance. We almost dismissed her, the teacher said. We laughed, thinking it would be cute or brief. But she taught us all a lesson. We should always be ready to see beyond the surface. The girl's mother watched quietly as her daughter shared her story with friends and teachers. She felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude. All the late nights of practice, all the quiet moments alone with the piano, had led to this. Her child had not sought attention, but had created a moment that touched many hearts. It was a lesson in patience, love, and determination. Even the children who had been playing around during the event were changed. They began to take more interest in practicing their own instruments. They asked their parents if they could spend more time learning. Inspired by the example of the small girl who had captured everyone's attention with sincerity and dedication. The lesson went beyond music. It was about perseverance, courage, and respect for the effort of others. The girl continued to practice quietly at home. She did not perform again immediately. She had already experienced the moment she wanted most, sharing a song with her mother. But now, she felt a quiet confidence that had not been there before. She understood that her actions had impact, that her courage could inspire others, and that her dedication mattered. Her mother often sat beside her, listening to the soft notes of practice. Sometimes she would close her eyes and let the music wash over her, remembering the performance in the hall. Other times she would offer gentle advice, helping her daughter refine her technique, or encouraging her to explore new pieces. They shared these moments quietly, knowing that the real reward was not applause, but the bond they had strengthened. Through music, the school began to see other quiet students taking more initiative. Encouraged by the story of the girl's courage, they asked to participate in events, share their own talents, or simply take small steps toward confidence. Teachers made a conscious effort to notice effort and dedication, recognizing that encouragement could make a big difference. Community. Members who had attended the event talked about the performance with friends and family. They described the moment when the girl played for her mother, the way the room had gone silent, and the emotional impact it had on everyone. People reflected on the lesson that it is never right to judge based on appearance or assumptions, and that courage often comes from unexpected places. The girl's mother sometimes met other parents who had been at the event. They thanked her quietly for encouraging her child and for allowing the girl to share her gift. She would smile, feeling proud of her daughter and grateful that the small, quiet act had touched so many hearts at home. The girl began to experiment with new songs, small improvisations, and simple compositions. She did not feel pressure to perform again soon. She played because she loved music, because it allowed her to express what words could not. Her mother listened, always attentive, always supportive, providing a steady source of encouragement. The story of the performance became a subtle legend in the school and local community. It was mentioned at gatherings, in casual conversations, and during other music events. The focus was never on the girl's appearance or the initial laughter. It was about courage, love, and the quiet power of sincere effort. Teachers continued to reflect on their assumptions and the ease with which they had doubted her. They realized that moments like this were reminders to see beyond the obvious, to nurture every student, and to celebrate small, genuine acts of bravery. The girl had shown that a single heartfelt performance could transform the way people thought and acted. Her mother continued to encourage her at home, reminding her that the performance had inspired more than applause. It had changed attitudes, created awareness, and touched hearts. Every note she played carried meaning. Every moment spent practicing was valuable. As the weeks went by, the girl became more confident in her own quiet way. She remained humble, never seeking attention, but she understood the effect her actions could have. She played not for recognition, but for the joy of expression and the love she felt for her mother. The community continued to cherish the memory of the performance. People who had been skeptical at first often admitted quietly that they had learned an important lesson. They remembered the girl's dedication, her courage, and the deep connection she shared with her mother through music. Through it all, the girl remained herself, quiet, focused, and sincere. Her music continued to grow, guided by love and determination rather than expectation. Her mother stayed by her side, proud and grateful, knowing that the most important lesson had already been shared. that courage, love, and quiet dedication could move hearts in ways nothing else could. The hall, the audience, and the small piano event became symbols of what one small act of bravery could achieve. People who had witnessed it carried the memory with them, often sharing the story with others, ensuring that the lesson lived on. The girl's simple question, "Can I play it for my mom?" had sparked a ripple effect, reminding everyone that talent, heart, and courage can be found in the most unexpected places. The days after the performance felt different for the girl and her mother. Every morning, she would wake up and go to her small practice corner, her fingers gently brushing the piano keys. Even when no one was listening, she felt the echoes of that day in the hall, and it gave her strength. Her mother would often stand by the door watching quietly, proud and amazed at the dedication her child showed. Word about her performance had spread through the school and into the local community. People who had been skeptical at first were now speaking of her with admiration. Students who had laughed or whispered before were now talking about her quietly, inspired by her courage and commitment. Teachers and parents reflected on how quickly they had judged, realizing that small acts of bravery could carry enormous weight. One day, a teacher approached her and asked if she would like to play in a small community recital. The girl hesitated, remembering the overwhelming feeling of the hall and the audience. But her mother placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder and said, "You play because it matters to you, not because of them. That is what makes it special." With that gentle encouragement, the girl agreed. When the day of the recital arrived, she felt the same nervousness as before. But this time she understood that the music was hers to share, a gift that reflected her heart and not the judgment of others. She took her place at the piano, glanced at her mother in the front row, and smiled softly. The warmth of that smile eased her anxiety as she began to play. The notes floated into the room, soft at first and then growing in confidence. The audience grew silent, captivated by the sincerity and emotion in each chord. The girl's fingers moved with a gentle determination, guided by countless hours of practice and a love for music that no applause could measure. Her mother watched, tears forming, proud of every single note. People who had doubted her before were now filled with wonder. They saw not only talent, but courage and commitment. They realized that judging by appearance or first impressions could never capture the depth of a person's heart or effort. The music told a story far greater than technique. It spoke of dedication, love, and honesty. After the performance, the applause was warm and genuine. But what mattered most was not the clapping, it was the feeling in the room. It's a shared understanding that a quiet, sincere act could touch many hearts. The girl's mother hugged her tightly, whispering, "You have given everyone a gift today. I am so proud of you." In the following weeks, the girl's confidence grew. She continued to practice diligently, exploring new pieces and small compositions of her own. She learned that music was more than just notes on a page. It was a way to communicate, to share emotions, and to connect with others. Her mother encouraged her, always present, quietly nurturing her growth. The story of the initial performance became a quiet legend in the school. Students often referred to it as an example of courage and dedication. Teachers incorporated the lesson into their daily guidance, reminding students that talent was often hidden and that every person deserved a chance. Even children who had been shy or hesitant began to step forward. Encouraged by the example of the girl who had dared to play for her mother, the community recognized the impact as well. People who had attended the event spoke of it with friends and family, emphasizing the lesson of humility, courage, and love. It was a story that transcended the performance itself. It became a reminder that the smallest gestures, driven by heart and determination, could inspire many. The girl continued to play at home, exploring her creativity and deepening her understanding of music. Her mother listened often, sometimes offering quiet advice, sometimes just sitting in the room and letting the music fill the space. These moments strengthened their bond, creating memories that would last a lifetime. The girl's performances, though few and personal, inspired others. Students asked her for tips and guidance. She shared what she had learned in a humble and patient way, emphasizing practice, attention, and love for music rather than seeking recognition. Her example encouraged others to pursue their interests, to be patient, and to value dedication over immediate reward. Over time, the girl began to participate in more local events, always choosing to play pieces that resonated with her, that carried emotion and meaning. Her performances were not about impressing others. They were about expressing herself, sharing a gift, and connecting with those willing to listen. The audience, in turn, learned to appreciate sincerity and effort, not just flashy skill. Her mother remained a constant support, celebrating each step of growth, encouraging her to take small challenges, and helping her understand the value of perseverance. Together, they nurtured not only skill, but character, teaching lessons of patience, humility, and the power of heartfelt expression. The school and community continued to celebrate the story quietly, letting it inspire without turning it into spectacle. Teachers shared it as an example of how important it was to notice effort and to give opportunities to those who might otherwise be overlooked. Parents reminded children to observe, encourage, and respect quiet dedication, understanding that true courage often appeared in small, unnoticed acts.